Preston just kept looking at me, not blinking, not saying anything. I started to worry. Preston. He stayed still. At least say something. His voice was hoarse. I'm checking whether I'm dreaming. I laughed, but tears were still sliding down my cheeks. Are you crying? Preston asked quietly. Maybe. Why? Because I finally don't have to lie anymore. That single sentence was enough to make Preston step closer. Very slowly, as if afraid that moving even a little too fast would make the moment disappear. Are you sure? He asked. Very sure. Not just because you're emotional?
No.
Not because of the pretty atmosphere?
No.
Not because of the sunset? I shook my head. Then why? I looked straight into his eyes. Because the person standing in front of me is you. For the first time since we'd known each other, Preston had nothing to say. Those blue eyes turned red. I had never seen him cry. Not even when he broke his wrist freshman year from skateboarding. Not even when his grandfather passed away. Not even when he got rejected by his internship company. And yet now, just because of one sentence from me, he was tearing up. Don't cry. I laughed. You're making me want to cry too.
Sorry.
Preston wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. It's just. I thought I'd have to keep this secret my whole life. The two of us stood facing each other, only a step apart, but neither of us moved. Then Preston laughed. Why is this so weird? What? In movies. This is usually the part where people. He trailed off. I understood right away. My face went hot. Oh, yeah. We both laughed awkwardly. It was strange. Over the past 2 years, we'd hugged each other celebrating good grades. Fallen asleep leaning on each other's shoulders on long drives. Held hands pulling each other across slippery roads. And yet now, just because the relationship had changed, everything suddenly felt brand new. Preston took a deep breath. Can I hold your hand? I didn't answer. I just quietly held mine out. His hand touched mine very gently, warm, and slightly trembling. Your hand is cold, Preston whispered. Because I'm nervous. Me too. We laced our fingers together, very naturally, as if these two hands had always been searching for each other for a long time. The sun had disappeared behind the mountains. The air was getting colder. Preston draped his jacket over my shoulders. By instinct, just like he'd done hundreds of times before. Except this time, after zipping it up for me, he froze.
Sorry.
What? I forgot. Forgot what? Now. I'm your boyfriend. I laughed out loud. So what? I don't know how I'm supposed to act. Me neither. Is there a manual?
No.
Does anyone teach this? Not really. Preston held his forehead.
I'm doomed.
I'm the worst boyfriend in America. We've only been together for 3 minutes. True. But I still feel the pressure. I shook my head, laughing. Preston. Just be yourself. The you from 2 hours ago. Don't try to change. Preston looked at me, then broke into the smile I loved most. The one that made the corners of his eyes crinkle. Okay. On the drive back to Seattle, the atmosphere in the car felt both familiar and strange. We still listened to the old playlist. Still argued over which song to play. Still stopped at a gas station for snacks. But every time our eyes accidentally met, we both smiled. This feels funny, Preston said. Funny how? Yesterday you were my best friend. Today you're my boyfriend. It feels like a promotion. I burst out laughing. Does the pay go up?
No.
Benefits? Yes. Like what? Preston raised an eyebrow. From now on I don't need an excuse to hug you. I turned to look out the window to hide my smile. Outside, the first lights of Seattle were appearing in the distance. When the car stopped in front of the dorm, neither of us got out right away. There's something, Preston spoke up. What? At school? Are we going public right away? I stayed quiet, not out of embarrassment, but because the question was more real than I'd expected. The school was very open this year. Our friends were too. But being public was still a huge step. Especially for me, someone who'd taken years just to admit he liked guys. I'm not ready, I said honestly. Preston nodded immediately. That's okay.
No rush.
I can wait. We'll take it slow. Not a hint of disappointment. Not a single word of pressure. That was exactly who Preston was. Always letting me move at my own pace. And maybe that was exactly why I loved him more. Before I got out of the car, Preston called me back. Orlando. Can I get a hug? I smiled. This time, I was the one who leaned in first. We held each other for a long time. Not passionate. Not rushed. Just a peaceful hug. Enough for both of us to understand that, after so many trips, so many missed timings, so many things left unsaid, we had finally found the place we wanted to return to. It wasn't a city. It wasn't a route. It was the arms of the other person. If you asked me what the hardest part was after two best friends became a couple, I'd answer right away, pretending like nothing had changed. The next morning, I still woke up at 7. Still brushed my teeth in the shared dorm bathroom. Still carried my backpack down to the lobby. At exactly 7:30, the familiar blue truck pulled up outside. Everything was just like every other day. Except, when I opened the car door, we both froze. Today, Preston scratched his head. How am I supposed to greet you? I was wondering the same thing. Handshake. Weird. Hug. In a parking lot? Fair point. We looked at each other for a few seconds, then both burst out laughing. Finally, Preston just said softly, "Good morning, boyfriend." I felt my ears burn at the last word. Good morning. I tried to stay calm. Boyfriend. Just two simple words. But hearing them from the person I loved felt completely different. I couldn't focus in class that day. The professor was lecturing on brand recognition. I just sat staring at my phone. On the screen was our text conversation from the night before. Preston. Made it back to your room? Me. Yeah. Preston. Good. Me. Question mark. Preston. Just making sure my boyfriend got home safe. I'd read that exchange at least 30 times. Just thinking about it was enough to make me smile. Orlando. The professor called. Would you like to share your thoughts? I jumped up, startled. Yes, sir. What was the question? The whole class laughed. I was so embarrassed I wanted to crawl under the desk. After class, Preston was already waiting downstairs. You got called on. How do you know? Hannah texted me. Great. I thought it was cute. Don't bring it up again. Preston kept laughing. By the time we got in the car, he still couldn't stop. I never thought someone as focused as you would lose your mind like that. Whose fault is that? Because, I started to say, then stopped. Preston tilted his head. Because I didn't sleep enough. Ah. He nodded knowingly. Not because you missed your boyfriend. I blushed. You already knew and you're still asking. Preston laughed so hard he had to pull over for a few seconds. I like hearing you admit it. Loving Preston had one interesting thing about it. We barely had to change our daily routine. Because before, we'd already spent so much time together. The only things that changed were tiny details. Preston started texting goodnight every night. Asking every morning if I'd eaten breakfast. If I was studying late, he'd bring food all the way to the studio. One day I was working on a project when I heard knocking on the glass. I turned around. Preston was standing outside holding 2 cups of bubble tea. He raised them up, grinning widely. I ran out. How did you know I was here? You always sit in this spot when a deadline's close. I remember. I brought food. And also, he pulled a chocolate bar out of his pocket. You'll need this. I took it. Couldn't help but laugh. You spoil me too much.
No.
Preston shook his head. I'm just doing my job. What job? Boyfriend. A week later, we took our first trip since officially dating. The destination was just a small coastal town. No special plans. No famous landmarks. Just a long beach, cold wind, and seagulls circling overhead. After dinner, we walked along the sand. I suddenly realized, This was the first time we were traveling as a couple. Does it feel different? I asked. Preston thought for a moment. Yes. Different how? You still walk slow just like before.
I'm asking seriously.
I'm being serious too. He laughed. Actually, a little. I keep wanting to hold your hand. Then why don't you?
I'm asking permission.
I looked at Preston's hand hanging by his side, then quietly reached my own hand over. No need for more words. Our fingers found each other on their own. The sea wind was very cold, but Preston's hand was always warm. Further along, we passed an elderly couple sitting on a wooden bench watching the sunset. The old man noticed our clasped hands and gave us a friendly smile. Have a good trip, you two. Thank you, Preston replied. The old woman looked at me. How long have you two been together? Before I could answer, Preston said, 1 week. The couple laughed. That's the best part. Don't forget to keep traveling together. The old man gestured toward his wife. We've been married 43 years. Still try to visit somewhere new every year. Not for the place itself, but because later on, what you'll remember will always be the person you went with. Preston and I looked at each other. Neither of us said anything, but we both understood. That was exactly what we'd always felt. We loved traveling, but what made every trip memorable was never the destination. It was the person sitting in the seat beside you. Back in the car, Preston suddenly opened the glove compartment. He pulled out a brown leather notebook I'd never seen before. What's that? A journal. Yours. Ours. I opened the first page. Right in the middle of the page was a line written in very neat handwriting. The places we've been together. Below it was a list of locations, dates, and small photos carefully printed and pasted in. The last page was still blank. Preston looked at me and smiled. I hope, by the time this notebook is full, we're still sitting side by side. I squeezed his hand gently. A strange kind of faith rose in my chest. Maybe our most beautiful journey wasn't the roads we'd already traveled, but the long road still waiting ahead. Fall of junior year arrived faster than we expected. Our class schedules were packed. One project after another. Preston started a part-time internship at a marketing company in downtown Seattle, while I took on freelance branding work for a few small businesses. For the first time since we'd known each other, we could no longer see each other every day. Turned out to be much harder to adjust to than we'd thought. I get off at 8. Preston texted. Don't wait up. I read the message, glancing at the still warm lunchbox on the table. 30 minutes later, I was standing outside his office building. Seattle had started to rain. Tiny raindrops reflected the streetlights. At exactly 8:15, Preston walked out with a few coworkers. He was chatting cheerfully when he suddenly spotted me. The smile on his face changed instantly. Warmer, softer, as if an entire exhausting day had suddenly vanished. Orlando, why are you here? I brought dinner. I held up the paper bag. Preston froze for a few seconds. A female coworker glanced back and forth between us. Your friend. Preston turned to her. Yeah. He smiled. The most important person. I felt my ears go hot. His coworker just gave a knowing smile and said goodbye. Once everyone had left, Preston hugged the paper bag. I told you not to wait. I didn't wait. So, I arrived at just the right time. He laughed. My boyfriend really is stubborn. We found a small restaurant nearby for dinner. While Preston devoured his food, I rested my chin on my hand, watching him. Why are you staring at me? No reason. Yes, there is. You're observing. I just noticed. You've gotten thinner. Preston paused. I'm fine.
No.
I can tell. He laughed it off. I just started working. Everyone goes through this. I stayed quiet. Up until then, Preston had always been the one taking care of me. So much so that I'd forgotten he could get tired too. That he needed care as well. That night, on the drive home, Preston suddenly said, Thank you. For what? For coming. I thought. No one knew how exhausted I was today. I turned to look at him. The red light lit up his face. For the first time in a long while, I noticed faint shadows under his eyes. I suddenly realized, growing up wasn't just about having a job. It was also about learning to be strong under pressures you'd never faced before. At the end of that semester, the school held a career fair. Over 100 companies came to recruit. Juniors and seniors all wore suits, resumes in hand.
I'm nervous.
I adjusted my tie. Preston stood behind me, carefully fixing my collar. You'll be fine. What if they don't like my portfolio? They will. How are you so sure? Because the most talented designer I've ever known, he smiled, is standing right in front of me. I shook my head. You're biased. True.
I'm biased.
Then Preston leaned in a little closer, saying it just for me to hear. But it's also true. That afternoon, things went better than expected. I got 2 interview offers. Preston got invited to meet with 3 companies. We were so happy we decided to treat ourselves at our usual taco truck. While waiting for the food, Preston's phone rang. He looked at the screen and frowned. What's wrong? It's my mom. Answer it. Preston nodded and stepped away. I didn't try to listen, but just from his expression, I could tell the call wasn't a pleasant one. 5 minutes later, Preston came back. The smile was gone. Is something wrong? He was quiet for a long time. Finally, he said softly, my parents want me to move back to Texas after graduation. I froze. Move back for good? Yeah. My dad's opening a new branch. He wants me to work there. The air between us suddenly grew heavy. I knew Preston's family was very close. I also knew his parents had always hoped he'd come home. It was just, I never thought that day would come so soon. What about you? I asked quietly. What do you want? Preston looked at me. For a long time, I want to be where you are. My chest tightened. But reality wasn't as simple as romantic words. I had just gotten the internship opportunity I dreamed of. In Seattle. Preston's dream job could be in Texas. For the first time since we'd fallen in love, our paths no longer completely aligned. That night, when he dropped me off at the dorm, we were both quiet. Before I got out of the car, Preston gently held my hand. Don't worry. It's nothing. It's not. He smiled very softly. I know you. Whenever you're upset, you go quiet. We still have almost a year before graduation. Let's not let the future ruin the present. I squeezed his hand gently. Okay. We'll figure it out later. Preston nodded. But as I walked up to my room, I looked back. The blue truck was still parked under the streetlight. Preston was still sitting behind the wheel, not starting the engine, not driving off, just quietly watching me until I disappeared behind the dorm door. At the time, I didn't know. That was only the first challenge. Life after graduation would present us with even harder choices, where love would no longer need just 2 hearts in sync, but also the courage to choose a shared future together. Winter of junior year arrived with Seattle's characteristic cold rain. During that stretch, Preston and I were so busy there were days we only saw each other for 20 minutes. Some days he got off work while I was still at the studio. Some days I got back to the dorm just as Preston had to finish his internship report. If it had been before, we probably would have found it normal. But now it was different. The more I loved him, the more I realized how much I missed him. One night close to Christmas, I was sitting editing my final design when my phone buzzed. Preston, can you come up to the rooftop? I checked the time. 10:47 p.m. I threw on a jacket and went up. The wind was freezing. The rooftop was almost empty. Only Preston was there, leaning against the railing, holding 2 cups of hot chocolate. You knew I'd come up? I was hoping. He handed me a cup. Not coffee. It's cold today. I thought you should drink this instead. I took a sip. The sweetness spread across my tongue. We stood side by side looking out at the lit-up city. After a long while, Preston finally spoke. I miss you. I turned to him. We saw each other earlier today. I know. Is something wrong? Yeah. He laughed helplessly. I think I'm addicted to you. I burst out laughing. That sounds terrifying. It's true. Any day I don't see you feels like something's missing. I thought I was the only one who felt that way. Preston tilted his head. You feel it too? I nodded gently. Me too. We looked at each other, then laughed together. No need for grand romantic declarations. Just a simple I miss you was enough to melt away an entire exhausting day. At the end of the semester, the school held a winter formal. It was the biggest event of the year. Students wore suits and gowns, danced, and took photos. Hannah texted the group chat. Everyone has to come. Ethan added immediately.
No excuses.
Preston looked at his phone and sighed. They're going to force us to go. You don't want to?
No.
I just hate wearing suits. I thought you looked good in anything. He raised an eyebrow. Is my boyfriend flirting with me? I'm just stating facts. Preston laughed so hard he had to hold his chest. That's dangerous. The night of the formal. I wore a dark navy suit. I was fumbling with my tie when there was a knock at the door. I opened it. Preston was standing there. A charcoal suit fit snugly over his tall frame. His hair was neatly styled. I stared, stunned. What? Preston looked down at his own clothes. Is something wrong?
No.
I said honestly. It's just. You look so handsome. Preston stood still for a few seconds, then laughed. The person who just said that is just as handsome. At the hall, Hannah shrieked immediately. You two finally decided to dress up. Ethan looked us up and down and whistled. I'm serious. If you two started a travel social media account, you'd make so much money. I just want to graduate. Preston replied. That's your only ambition? Something bigger. I want to rest. The whole group burst out laughing. That night went wonderfully. We took photos, had dinner, joined games. Near the end of the program, the band began playing slow ballads. Many couples stepped onto the dance floor. I was about to go get some water when Preston lightly touched my elbow. Orlando. Come with me. Where? The back garden. Behind the hall was a small garden covered in warm yellow lights. Music from inside drifted out, just barely audible. The air was cold, but pleasant. Preston stood in front of me. You know. What? Today I was thinking. If this is the last formal of our college years, I don't want any regrets. Before I could understand, he extended a hand toward me. Dance with me. I looked around. Here? Yeah. There's no one around. I don't know how to dance. Neither do I. Then, no one to judge us. I laughed, then placed my hand in his. At first we were both clumsy, stepping on each other's feet constantly.
Sorry.
Me too. Are your feet still intact? Seems fine so far. We couldn't stop laughing. But gradually, our steps slowed. Preston gently placed a hand on my back. The space between us closer than ever. The laughter faded. Only the gentle music from the hall remained. I love this time, Preston whispered. Why? Because we're still students. Still get to go to class together. Travel together. See you every day. He smiled softly. I'm scared that after graduation, everything will change. I squeezed his hand gently. Things might change. But I don't want to change the person I'm going with. Preston looked at me. In the soft yellow light, his blue eyes shone with a quiet kind of joy. He didn't say anything, just gently rested his forehead against mine. In that moment I understood. What worried us was never the distance. It was the fear that time would turn two people who once couldn't bear to be apart into people who only met in memories. And both of us quietly promised ourselves we would do everything we could to make sure that never happened. That Christmas break, I didn't go back to Portland. Preston didn't go back to Texas either. The reason was simple. We both had to work extra to save money for our senior year. On December 24th, the campus was almost empty. Most students had gone home days earlier. The dorm was so quiet you could hear the wind whistling through the trees. Around 7 in the evening, I was making instant noodles when my phone rang.
Come downstairs.
It was Preston. Why? There's a present. We agreed not to buy expensive gifts. Right? So it's not expensive. I threw on a jacket and ran down. The blue truck was parked right outside the dorm. A thin layer of snow on the roof. Preston opened the passenger door. Get in. Where are we going? Secret. I laughed. Ever since I met you. The word, secret, started sounding terrifying. Don't worry. No confessions of love this time. Are you sure? Preston laughed loudly. Not this time. We drove for almost 40 minutes and stopped at a small Christmas market by the harbor. Strings of yellow lights hung everywhere. The smell of cinnamon, hot chocolate, and cookies filled the air. A local band was playing familiar Christmas songs. This is amazing, I said softly. I knew you'd like it, Preston replied. We walked slowly among the stalls. Some sold handmade crafts. Some sold knitwear. Some sold glass ornaments in all shapes. I stopped at a stall selling fridge magnets. Out of habit. Orlando, Preston called. This one. He handed me a small wooden keychain. Carved on it was a little pickup truck, with words underneath. Adventure begins together. I laughed. Looks like blue. Yeah. I saw it and thought of us right away. I turned the keychain over in my palm. Is this the gift? Not yet. That's just the intro. After dinner, Preston took me to the pier. The water reflected the city lights, sparkling. The cold wind made me pull my collar up. Preston dug through his backpack and pulled out a square box wrapped in navy blue paper. Merry Christmas. He handed it to me. Should I open it now? Yeah. I carefully undid the ribbon. Inside was a photo album, not a store-bought kind, a handmade one. The first page was a photo from the day we first met. Me staring down at my coffee-stained shoes. Preston standing behind me looking panicked. Where did you even get this? I was surprised. The school's camera system. You got a copy of that? You actually got this? Not exactly. Preston laughed. Ethan knows someone at the media office. I shook my head, both amused and exasperated. I turned to the next page. A photo from Olympic National Park. Then the Oregon coast trip. The camping trip. The day we got the blue truck. The sunset on the hill. The first photo after we officially started dating. Every photo had a short caption in Preston's handwriting. One page simply read, "The day you laughed the most." Another said, "That day the car broke down, but it was still one of the best days." Another read, "The first time I knew I loved you." I lingered on that line for a long time. My eyes stung. The last page was just blank space. Below it, the words, "The best photos haven't been taken yet." I looked up. Preston was watching me anxiously. Do you like it?" I didn't answer. I just stepped forward and hugged him tightly. "I love it. I really love it." "Thank you." Preston smiled softly. "It took me almost 2 months to make." "I know. I can tell." "Your turn," Preston said. I pulled a long box out of my backpack. "My gift isn't as touching." "It's fine." Preston opened it. Inside was a bronze compass, fairly small, engraved on the back. "Wherever we go, we find home." Preston went quiet. He traced the words with his finger. "I remember you once said," I said softly, "the most important thing about any trip isn't the destination. It's who you go with." So, I thought, no matter where we end up later, Seattle, Texas, or anywhere, as long as we're still going together, then that place will be home. Preston looked up. His eyes were red. "I don't know how you keep getting better at saying things that make people cry. Your influence." We both laughed. On the drive back, the snow started falling more heavily. The blue truck drove slowly through streets covered in white. Neither of us played music. We just quietly enjoyed the rare stillness. In front of the dorm, Preston didn't get out of the car right away. He watched the falling snow. "Orlando. Next year. It'll be senior year." "Yeah. That's fast." "Yeah. We'll graduate." We'll start working. We'll have to make a lot of decisions. I took his hand. Whatever happens, we'll decide it together. Preston squeezed my hand gently. Yeah. Outside the window, snow kept quietly blanketing the road. Neither of us knew what the future held. But for the first time, I wasn't afraid like before, because I understood one thing. Happiness wasn't about whether the road ahead was smooth. It was about the fact that, no matter which direction that road turned, the hand holding mine would still be Preston's. Senior year began with an email. I still remember that morning very clearly.
7:12 a.m.
I was sitting in our usual coffee shop near campus when my phone kept buzzing. Congratulations. Just seeing those first two words, my heart started pounding. I opened the email. It was a full-time internship offer from a design studio I dreamed of since freshman year. If things went well, after graduation I'd be converted into a full-time employee. I read the letter over 3 times, then immediately called Preston. Hello. I got it. There was exactly 1 second of silence on the other end. Then Preston shouted so loud I had to hold the phone away from my ear. I knew it. I knew you could do it. Where are you? Bean Street. Don't go anywhere. 10 minutes. The call ended. 9 minutes later, Preston burst into the cafe like a gust of wind. Not caring how many people were around, he wrapped me in a hug. Congratulations. I'm so proud of you. It wasn't the polite kind of congratulations. I could hear real joy in his voice, as if my success was his success too. But that joy only lasted until the afternoon, when Preston got a phone call. After he hung up, he sat quietly for a long time. I got in too. I smiled. Really? Congratulations. Which company? Preston took a deep breath. A company in Austin. The smile on my lips froze. Austin, Texas. Nearly 3,000 kilometers from Seattle. I tried to keep my voice normal. That's far. Yeah. They want you to start after graduation? Yeah. I nodded. That's a great opportunity. The company you always liked. Yeah. The air between us suddenly went quiet. For the first time since we'd fallen in love, neither of us knew whether to celebrate or worry. In the weeks that followed, we both tried to avoid talking about after graduation. We focused on projects, on work, on weekend trips. But the more we avoided it, the bigger the question grew. One evening, sitting in the library, Hannah pulled up a chair next to me. I have something to ask. Go ahead. After graduation, what are you two planning? I smiled weakly. Not sure yet. You're not going to Texas? Before I could answer, Hannah continued. Don't get me wrong. I just think. You two always think about the other person. But don't forget to think about yourselves too. That sentence stayed with me for days. Another night, Preston and I sat on the hood of the blue truck, watching the star-filled sky on the outskirts of Seattle. A familiar scene, but a completely different mood. Orlando. If. Preston hesitated. I'm just saying if. Yeah. If in the end, we end up working in 2 different states. Would you hate me? I turned to him sharply. Are you crazy?
I'm asking seriously. No.
I will never hate you, no matter what you choose. Preston lowered his head.
I'm afraid.
I'll force you to give up your dream. I laughed softly. You know what I like most about you? What? You always think you're a burden, when you've never once been that. I took his hand. Don't decide for me. If there's a choice to make, we'll find it together. A few days later, the school held its final club fair for graduating seniors. On the quad, so many underclassmen were just as excited as we'd been 4 years earlier. Preston suddenly stopped in front of the travel club's bulletin board. In the middle of the board were hundreds of photos from different class years. Among them were many photos of the 2 of us. Camping photos, kayaking photos, photos in front of the ocean, photos next to the blue truck. An underclassman spotted us and shouted, Preston, Orlando, I've been looking at your photos. You two are kind of famous. I laughed. Not really. You are. The student pointed to a corner of the board. There, printed in fairly large letters, was a line. It doesn't matter how far you travel. What matters is who you travel with. That's your line, right? Preston and I looked at each other. It was something we'd once shared at a club gathering at the end of junior year. We never expected it would end up printed on the board. The student smiled. Every new class reads it. It's really inspiring. After he left, Preston stood staring at the words for a long time. Then he said softly, "You know, no matter where we end up later, I don't want that line to just be a memory." I looked at him. "Then don't let it become a memory. Let's make it our life." Preston smiled. For the first time in weeks, I saw the light back in his eyes, as if we'd both finally understood that the thing to do wasn't to fear the future. It was to be brave enough to build it together.